ReefDudes is sponsored by Brightwell Aquatics and Bulk Reef Supply.
Today we're starting the Frag Tank Makeover. What's going on, guys? Devin from ReefDudes. Now, I've been talking about it for a little while now, and we are going to give the Frag Tank a complete kind of reset, redo, and turn it into a shallow lagoon style display tank. So what I've started to do is move some of the coral out of the tank. All right, so I have this little 3-foot tank set up, and I've been moving my zoas inside of this guy. Now, one other thing I've been doing is as I find the little nudibranchs, I've been moving them to this tank. So all the ones on the bottom, last night with a buddy, we removed most of the Aptasia off of it. This frag rack still has some, and I've been adding the nudibranchs onto this rack. That way, as they'll start munching down the Aptasia. Now, I'm not gonna add any fish to this tank. It's just gonna be any coral that has Aptasia on it and the nudibranch. So hopefully they'll breed and they'll wipe out all the Aptasia before it gets moved back into the display. So once I finish getting out the rest of the racks and the coral, everything else, I am going to catch the fish and they are going to move into this bin. So they're going to live in here for a few days. And what I'm actually going to do is kind of fully reset this tank just to get rid of all the coralline, all the Aptasia, bits of bulb algae, all the nasty stuff that's accumulated over time. So once all the good stuff's out, I'm going to drain this down, suck out all the nasties, we'll get rid of that. We're going to refill it up with fresh water and dump in a ton of citric acid and let it run overnight. And that's just going to help dissolve and get rid of those little caked on layers of coralline algae on the back wall and any of the Aptasia that's living in any of the pipes or any overflows in your weird spot. This should just basically give the tank a really good cleaning and more or less make it like new. Down below here, I did take out all my Brightwell bricks. I have one in the Zoa tank and I have the other one in the fish tank. And I think I got one more in the back I still got to pull out, and I'll probably throw that in the fish tub. So this should provide enough bacteria to kind of keep the fish and everything safe for now. And I can transfer those back in to kind of help jumpstart the cycle on the tank as well once I add all the new rock into it. So I do have some Aquaforest rock that's in the mail that should be here on Monday. So once that shows up, hopefully the tank will be clean, sterilized by then. I can add the new rock and hopefully get some sand, and we'll give it a really cool scape and then refill it with salt water. Now the other couple things I'm going to change and try out for a while now. As you guys saw, I do have the Focustronic light. Now I have been running the Mastertronic, and there's also the Algatronic behind there that I've been running for a while now. I'm going to see if I can mount those two on the back wall to clean up this space. And I got some 5-gallon ATO containers, which I'm actually going to try using as dosing containers. So I'm going to try dosing for a while and try letting the Dosetronic completely automate dosing. I'm really curious to see how fully automated mode works, as I've only ever used it to monitor and just tested myself. And for dosing containers, I picked up 4 5-gallon, I guess they're Triton ATO containers. And these guys are going to be for calcium elk mag and Algatronic reagent. Now, one thing about dosing is I was never a big fan of mixing up and refilling containers all the time, so 5 gallons should last me ages. So pretty stoked for that. So I definitely do have my work cut out for me over the next few days to finish clearing all the rest of this coral out. As I do that, I'm also fragging off any of the nasty bits and just tossing it, making new frags of just the good stuff, which will help reduce anything that makes it back into kind of the new pristine tank. So I actually just remembered that I had the Python, so I hooked that up, and this is going to make life a lot easier. So right now I have this draining to the downstairs sink. Once it's done, I'll use it to drain the sump, and I'm going to use that to refill it with fresh water, and then we'll dump in a bunch of citric acid and let it run overnight. Once it's that overnight citric acid, all the coralline, all that stuff just dissolves and it comes off like nothing. So that was far too much work, but finally got the tank drained and for the most part wiped out. I have just been wiping it with paper towel just to soak up the little bits of like coralline flakes and the rest of the water. I don't think I'm going to bother refilling it with tap water now, just because it's basically dry, so there should be nothing really left in there for the citric acid. Look at this sump. This is like the cleanest I think I've ever seen this thing other than the day it was new. So you can see my nice lovely bucket of paper towel as I wipe it and soak up the last little bits in there. Now that everything is for all intensive purposes clean, we start the slow process of filling. So just kicked on the RODI. So this is 180 gallon per day with the booster pump. So hopefully it doesn't take too long, but let this baby fill as I finish cleaning up. So I let this run overnight, now it's almost filled. Now before I went to bed I actually installed the Flood Guardian just as a precaution. I knew it wouldn't fill overnight, but just in case, that peace of mind, I put the sensor down in the sump so that basically how it works is an optical sensor. If it gets tripped, it shuts off the solenoid. And I also use this for refilling my ATO container. So I have one of these on a timer, so it automatically turns on, it refills the ATO, and if it hits that sensor, it shuts off the solenoid. So I have that, then a float valve. So it's super useful for filling up your bins, or if you want to use it for kind of an automatic ATO refill. But the tank is full. I can hear it's dripping down and starting to fill the sump now, so we're getting close. So I just plugged in all the MP40s along the back just to get some flow in the tank, and I'm gonna start dumping in some salt to start getting it salty. So I do have a bunch of bags of Neomarine salt, and that's the one I use in my auto water change. This is the one we're gonna start mixing into the tank and let it start to turn into salt water. So it's been probably about 24 hours of filling it. It's finally just about full, just need a smidge more. I just kicked on the return pumps and it did suck down a little bit too low, so almost there. And just about at 34 and a half ppt, about 20 degrees. So things are starting to heat up. And yeah, so finally gonna let things start to stabilize, which is awesome. It was a ton of work this week and I'm not gonna lie. But we got the tank, basically was full of coralline algae, adaptasia, bubble algae, everything in there. We took out all the livestock. We got all the zoas with the aptasia in one tank. I got the fish and the rock and the acros in another temporary tank. And the tank is just about ready to roll. So water-wise, brand new salt water. The citric acid dissolved everything, so it's basically starting with a fresh tank again. Drained it out, refilled it with salt water. So pretty happy. It was a lot of work, but it's basically resetting the tank, and now we're gonna turn to like an awesome lagoon display. Hopefully tomorrow my rock will show up in the mail and we can do like a really cool aquascape and then add our sand to it. And yeah, after that, I do have the Brightwell bricks in both of the tubs, so that is the biomedia basically that was running the frag tank. Now, because I didn't have any rock in there in the frag tank mode, that was basically all the biomedia. So in theory, putting that back into the sump is going to replace that same bioload, or at least a good chunk of it. So I will add some bottle bacteria on top of it, but that should be able to handle most of the load already. Now, I'm not sure if the rock has any bacteria in it, but if I use some live sand as well, I think that's going to be a pretty good place to start off again. Let that run for a little bit, and then we can add our livestock and stuff back in, our corals back into the tank. So yeah, so pretty stoked. I think I'm gonna be really happy with this as a display tank, and I think it's gonna be a lot more fun. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's weekend project of resetting the tank and a bit of a frag tank makeover. Hopefully next week we'll be scaping and turning it into something awesome. All right guys, as always, if you enjoyed it, hit that like button. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next update.